You're listening to the Zititic Newscast on the Zititic News Network with your hosts, Dave, and Xavier Diamant. Proceed by inquiry.
All right, welcome to the Zititic Newscast. This is your hosts Dave, and Xavier Diamant. Thanks for joining. It's March 23rd, 2020, and we are in the midst of one of the most incredible singularity of singularities, I would say, of our lifetimes. But before we jump into it, I want to make a couple announcements and sort of housekeeping items. If you just head on over to ztitic.news, you'll notice that we've got a new cryptocurrency ticker here along the bottom of the page. Pretty slick. Got a few choice crypto projects, but this is a pretty extensible application. We'll be adding more as time goes on. Also, as per a recommendation from Xavier, I looked into the basic attention token in the Brave browser, and I'm really impressed with that project. I have downloaded the Brave browser and been using it since we went for that hike, Xavier. And I read up on that token, and actually I believe they had some sort of informal partnership with Theta as well. And to me, those two projects really go hand in hand: transparency in advertisement, as well as transparency in video content distribution. And I'll just say at this juncture, we are looking deeply into integrating both of those things into the Zititic News Network. We're also considering some sort of paid for content type of promotion. Not sure if it'll be a sustainable thing or a one-time thing or just a beta test, but we're looking for new contributors, like-minded contributors who are willing to ask the dumb questions, like me over here, Dave, always asking the dumb questions and hoping that people will proceed by inquiry, not taking what we say for, verbatim truth or anything, but we're just regular people like you, trying to make sense of what's going on in today's turbulent world. So with that said, those are the housekeeping items. Of course, you can always subscribe to the Zititic Newscast through the podcasting platforms. We did have an episode release with Xavier's last missive on the coronavirus, and I wanted to start with that because I mentioned last time the headline was so poignant. Coronation virus, medical martial law power grab crowned as the all-in strategy by desperate governments wanting worldwide tyranny. Now, it was too long for me to use in the YouTube, but that's that's just a character restriction on our site. I think it's very apropos, and not only does this title really say it all, but after we had this discussion and I digested your article, I was actually brought back to our January 7th, our first episode of the year, where we spent 4 hours talking about the top 20 mega singularities of 2020. And I mean, what separates a singularity from a mega singularity? It's that they converge, and they are themselves almost their own singularity. And after we spoke, I was just thinking about some of the developments that we had our eye on before we even transitioned into 2020, and they are all seemingly converging into this whole coronavirus reaction that we're getting. So if I just quickly go down the list, number 2 on the list is health wars. All right, fluoridation, chemtrails, 5G, electromagnetics, vaccinology, and Skyrizi, the pharmaceutical ad for the, and so, like, with the coronavirus, not only is it purportedly a biological weapon that is airborne and potentially sold or dealt from American Bioweapons Laboratory, not too far from Zititic News headquarters, to Wuhan, China. But there are also so many other things happening globally, like 5G and the forced vaccination ploy that play into this completely. And I see so many of those things converging, now that people are working from home and working virtually, and they're literally locked in their house. They're trying to entertain themselves. So the internet infrastructure is being, strained to some extent, the bandwidth capacity and so on. And so you see almost out of this a contrived justification for, like Orthogonal said in our last discussion, the adoption of 5G. And we know they're laying the groundwork there for virtual reality, and all that goes into 360-degree stereoscopic video that's being projected through these new devices they're coming up with. So that in itself, Health Wars, says it all. But if you keep going down the list, I mean, the one right after that, which was very synchronistic, global currency reset. And I cannot separate what's going on with the coronavirus and the currency reset. I mean, I think they are inextricably linked.
100%. I mean, and just for what it's worth, and this could be pure coincidence, but I've lost hope in coincidences a long time ago for being anything other than just lack of full spectrum information on a topic. But corona is a 6-letter word, and if you add up alphanumerically the letter to number combinations in corona, it comes to 66.
Wow.
So you have 666 in corona. 6-letter word, all the letters add up to 66 within the alphabet.
Well, also, they could have picked any sort of common strain to create a bioweapon. Why did they pick corona? Is it because of the Latin word part corona, crown? Is that like almost like a gang symbol, like, hey, we're the royal families, we're the aristocracy, we control your reality? And with the response, who can deny now that they do control reality? And they can so quickly, the global coordination through the World Health Organization, the CDC's skullduggery and whatnot, that they get so many independent businesses to capitulate psychologically. I mean, that like you said in the last discussion, that's quite a hat trick, pretty convincing, although they might have bitten off more than they can chew. But has been, awesome in the literal sense of the word. Like, I'm in awe of how vast and sweeping and quick everybody just got in line.
It sets awe in the sense of shock and awe.
Right.
This is all shock and awe tactics. Right. And just like they pulled off with the WMD, fake evidence around the Iraq War, the fake explanation for the fall of the Twin Towers, they're really going full bore, and it is an all-in strategy.
Right.
I mean, if you're talking about it in terms of a Faustian wager and a Faustian bargain, well, they're crowning the beast system,
right?
Symbolically,
yep.
Etc. And what people really need to understand is that this has been in the works for generations.
It couldn't have been so short notice or so coordinated, such short notice, if it had not been planned. And there have been so much predictive programming. Actually, I found this
Absolutely.
interesting article about, you brought up the movie Contagion way before Slate ever thought to say watching Contagion in the age of the coronavirus, is simultaneously terrifying and comforting. Look, they got CDC, all the script approval from the military industrial complex to make these predictive programming. It's such anybody in the military who's actually in the military, boots on the ground, they know that this is psychological warfare, and they always condition the population with media before there's an invasion or any kind of operation. So Slate, with their article here on the 19th, is really late to the party. But getting back to the just the convergence of so many of the singularities we had in our list. Number 4, 2020 American election theater. Okay, Xavier, they're talking about canceling some voting now, and in some locations to reduce exposure to COVID-19. And now, okay, so they never would have considered online or some blockchain derived voting tablature system. They would have never made it actually easy for people to represent themselves to their government. But now that COVID-19 is, swarmed, they can cancel in-person voting, and they're going to roll out digital systems that are 1,000% rigged.
100%, yeah.
I mean,
absolutely.
in short order. It's going to be here in time for the 2020. Not that Donald Trump even needs that to win, because they've already basically shot themselves, intentionally shot themselves in the foot with Biden to
Sloppy Joe.
sloppy. It will be entertaining though, which is why it's theater. But we don't need to say much more. Okay, the other big one for me was societal surveillanceification and the Droneopticon. So now all these companies' events, these personal events, conferences and whatnot would have been in person. They're now virtual. I can't tell you how much I'm hearing. We're in this virtual world now. I have literally heard that out of people's mouth, and quote, this is the new normal and we just have to adapt. Okay. Everybody's already got cameras in their house. They've been buying them for years. I'm guilty as charged. Facebook's got Portal. And then I know later in our list, we talk about virtual reality. John Carmack said on the Joe Rogan show, 90% of activities in VR are things that you would do on the TV today. That's step 1. Step 2 is to, get you to play a game in VR, maybe a simulation of some sort. Step 3 is to start to have meetings virtually, which has been done for forever now, but some companies are now mandating that. And they are saying it's going to be this way for the foreseeable future. I'm telling you, I'm hearing that corporate messaging. So before long, when are companies going to start buying? Oh, welcome to the company. Thank you for, for joining the team. Here is your VR headset.
Right.
That
there is no workplace.
No.
Yeah.
And then with the Real ID starts in October. Now I've seen some states are actually, quote, I think this is a whitewash personally, but they're like asking for a delay in the implementation of the Real ID requirements because it's hard for people to get their papers from the DMV because that would require them to be there in person and they want to reduce exposure. So they're still trying to play along with the narrative, but at the same time, we also probably need some more testing, on our injectable chip. So that when we do actually require you to have a Real ID, that it will also include your vaccine information. That's my thought on that. Those stories about states saying, oh, we need to delay the Real ID. They are not delaying any kind of implementation for some bullshit reason like that. They are escalating in my opinion. I mean, what do you think about the whole ID thing?
Well, I mean, we've we've talked about this for years before we ever started this official podcast. But even when we started on the podcast early on, we were talking about how they they need the veil of consent
Right.
to legitimize their mass hypnosis and their mass spellcast and their egregore of a new age authority that supersedes all national laws and considerations.
They've already
And
got people wanting to, they've already got people in the mindset of accepting a requirement for your child to have a certain section of vaccines to participate in, quote, public education, right? So they've already got that war won to a large extent. The next step is to get people sort of at each other's throats about which ones they have or don't have through the media hype and hysteria. And I feel like they took a huge step forward with this COVID-19 ploy. Although there are a lot of people like us who, have somewhat of a memory left after all the fluoridation and remember Zika and the fervor. I mean, I literally had a vacation during that whole scare, and some folks just decided not to go because they were like trying to get pregnant or whatever. They were worried about their baby having a little head. Not that I'm not concerned about like Bill Gates, and all the bioweaponry that's going on, but I do think a certain section of this stuff is like manufactured crisis to get people up in, fear-based thought patterns to continue the trajectory of compliance. But I'm just not going to live like that. And if you take care of yourself immune system wise, you can actually combat a lot of that. But
well, and as we've detailed in the past, I mean, they use the banner of science to justify their tyranny at every single step around every single corner.
right.
And I don't think this is an exception at all. The more I look into this, viruses, as we've come to believe them, are like, this game-ending, superorganism that, lives to destroy humankind. And it's pure science fiction. Viruses are not alive. They don't have any respiration. Their entire makeup is just protein and cell constituency makeup.
You have to be weak already.
Yeah, you have
weak
to be
and
so
compromised.
weak, and you have to be so toxic internally already
Right.
for it to really take a huge damaging effect. And it's your body's way of trying to rid itself of all of the internal and external
Dude,
toxins.
think about how powerful we are that they have to do so much to kill us. Like
So much.
from the GMOs to the fluoridation to the chemtrails to the electromagnetics, the frequency from Wi-Fi and cell phone towers and TVs and the high fructose corn syrup, and it goes on and on and on and on, and yet the best they can do with these bioweapons is like 10 to 20% infection rate, and then even the death rate is never really pans out to like what the media hypes it to be.
Right, and even when they come up with an extremely toxic variant like Ebola, it doesn't pass easily.
Right.
It doesn't pass easily at all. In fact, you basically have to swap genital fluids or saliva or something
Right.
in order for it to actually work.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is, the more you look into something, the WikiWiki video that I posted to, he talks about Stefan Lonka out of Germany and how this, little master's thesis student, gave him 6 documents supposedly detailing the existence of the measles virus.
Right. I watched that.
Unbelievable. And if you look into that case, which I have, it is unreal. The lower court ordered Lonka to pay him. He appealed it to the Supreme Court of Germany. They brought in the highest scientific authority, virological authority, and they could not prove beyond a shadow of the doubt that the measles virus is contagious.
Well, look, there's so much.
They couldn't do it.
There's so much in established medicine that isn't even established, right? For example,
Right.
the placebo effect. They can't even explain why the placebo effect is still an effect when the test subjects know that it's a placebo.
Aha.
Okay, so then you get into a mind over matter type scenario, and
That's right.
you know, where does immunity come from to begin with? That's a whole nother subject we could do, you know, we could do a session on, but I want to stick to the it's incredibly synchronistic list of singularities we put together, you know, because like for real, if we're trying to warn people, I'm not that concerned with the virus itself. Like I said, like you said, if you're taking the right precautions with your nutrition, and that's really it. I mean, all this social distancing stuff is total mind control.
It's exactly. It's social engineering.
It is.
They want to acclimate and force people
Yeah.
to adapt
Right.
to anti-human conditions.
Anti-human conditions. Get in your and see, they've already tried to engineer most populations into very tight quarters.
That's right.
And now they're gonna make it so tight you're just gonna sit with a VR headset. The way that they really enforce that is through economic crash, and that's to me what's the biggest danger here is literally the supply chain disruption, the economic and the plans which we've talked about and we know are, you know, sort of in motion to bring about a cashless society with a digital, you know, mark of the beast, social credit score type system. And you can see all the stars aligning with this. But this is where we get into a real white hat, red hat, black hat type scenario. Is it like Bix Weir says and others say, are there more benevolent, although maybe epigenetically aristocratic type families who are trying to, you know, to help us evolve past the need for a money system, even though they've been perpetrators of it for so many years? Or is it just the New World Order cabal, you know, one world order plan that's been in place, you know, for thousands of years to have sort of an end times confrontation of global powers that lead to a one world, you know, the dream of every despot in history? It remains to be seen, but we can see all the gears turning, right? Federal
Absolutely.
Reserve lending additional $1 trillion a day to large banks. The Trump proposed stimulus package, quote unquote, eyes a digital dollar to send aid to the unbanked. So the money that Steve Mnuchin and Trump is promising to small businesses and individuals and families is somehow going to be delivered digitally. And this falls right in line with what China had done earlier back in February, and that was quarantining cash to sanitize old banknotes from virus. So basically a confiscatory policy of cash quarantine. So, I mean, QE infinity, $1 trillion a day, $3,000, $2,000, $1,000 checks to people. I mean, it's hyperinflation at a minimum, but at the same time, you know, all these businesses have capitulated. We know people, orthogonal reptilian, friend of the show, he's unemployed right now.
Right.
So what do you
and-
do?
Yeah.
It's a tough shit, you know, with so many people dependent on the system.
Well, I think that the main thing to keep in mind is every single civil liberty or every single excuse that an authoritarian structure comes up with to justify new powers never come back. They never come back. Look at all of the civil liberties lost after 9/11. Have any of those come back? No.
Right. Right. Laws never get repealed. Once they're put into place, they are never repealed.
Right. And look at the post 2008, financial crash. The same exact fragility continued to exist in the markets every single day thereafter, and the system just played everyone for a fool and got all of their money, all their 401ks and IRAs into this, fiendish bubble, just so they could crash it by design.
Yeah. So I wanted to highlight Ben Fulford's report, since it is Monday, and he does a report every Monday. And always interesting stuff from Ben. I don't have a subscription, so I don't have I can't get his full article. He releases it for free on Thursday. But it's interesting. He says the fake end times scenario now unfolding in the West will soon get more fantastical. So sit back and enjoy the show. Although it may seem scary at times, the real aim is to create a better world. Quote, "We have defined the duration of the theater as 20 months, end quote, says a European royal family source. So far, over 30 countries and 1 billion people are on lockdown as part of the opening act. However, at the same time, we are also hearing from esoteric sources that a very real war that has been raging for thousands of years is coming to an end. When humanity is victorious, the quarantine on planet Earth will be lifted, and we will be able to explore the universe, according to sources in the family groups that control monotheism." Before this is possible, though, the old financial control grid has to be collapsed, and that means there will be turbulence and some hardship, especially in the West, as the rest of the world stops paying tribute to the Khazarian mob, Asian secret society sources say.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the first and third paragraphs that you read seem to contain a voracious message. I'm not so sure about the planetary exploration and all that stuff. As we've detailed before, there's plenty of reason to be skeptical about that.
Right, and yeah, he's talking about there, according to sources in the family groups that control monotheism, so sometimes I hear him talk about that, like and ETs and whatnot, and I have to keep in mind a lot of his sources are intelligentsia and secret society people who themselves are brainwashed. Right? Or they know it and they are purposefully wording their messaging to, to sort of obfuscate that issue. He has addressed flat Earth from time to time, and I think he skirts it by saying, I'm just a reporter and I aggregate, sources and their information and allow people to sort of decide what is what. Interesting as a reporter, because he does take some very hard stances on things and he has opinions. I mean, he claims himself to be sort of representing the Eastern secret societies who had offered him protection from the Western secret societies, specifically the P2 Freemasons. So yeah, I always look at his stuff with a grain of salt, but when some things sort of line up with other sources, it at least tells me, man, this is a high stakes game at a level which most people can't even perceive. They're not reading BenjaminFulford.net, they're just taking in what the mainstream corporate news networks are dishing out, and it really is coming down from on high. What the corporate news networks want to, put out there, it is coming on down. And the coronavirus thing, evidences that more clearly than I think I've ever seen in my life. How coordinated
sure.
and how much of people are just parroting, and people who I wouldn't even expect, do what the CDC says. Listen to your governments.
Can I also bring up this whole cryptic terminology and phraseology that they're using around this social distancing stuff? I mean, flatten the
curve. Yes.
Are you kidding me? It is in your face propaganda programming because there is no curve to flatten.
Yeah, I meant to bring that up on our last discussion, right? Because we were talking about how the world, individuals are being forced to become more insular, and we're having now the travel restrictions, and that actually brings up another article I wanted to share with you. In New York, they are now issuing letters like at the employer level for employees to be able to travel to and from work, right? And it basically stipulates, if you are stopped by law enforcement, you are to provide this letter to them, which says that you work at an organization and you're certified to work for them, that has been deemed as an essential function by the U.S. government, and so you should be allowed to proceed. And so now we're seeing as if the driver's license and the passport wasn't as much a boondoggle enough. Now we're gonna have to you're gonna have to prove that you've been vaccinated. I mean, this is it, folks. And yeah, I just
I mean, the thing that people really have to start going with within the truth community is attacking this whole pretext of viral scare tactics and the virus as this, human-eating nefarious organism that lives and breathes in an invisible universe to just destroy human life. I mean, that has to be deconstructed and seen for what it is. It's a yet another scientismic tyranny masquerading as public health, and people need to wake up to that, just like they need to wake up to the systematic poisoning of the population for decades.
Even people like I think Steven Crowder's just become too much infotainment, frankly.
Absolutely.
But I appreciate what he does. I appreciate some of his work, right? And but he comes out and it's just like thoughtlessly recommending that people listen to the CDC. Okay.
Yeah.
I can compartmentalize my brain. If the CDC tells me that I should wash my hands after I handle my chickens, okay, I agree with you, but it's like, a broken clock is right twice a day or whatever the saying is, it's not because you had an independent thought that I agreed with. It's just it happened to line up with my own ethos this one time, But now it's like,
right
now the CDC is just like this bastion of wisdom and professionalism, and I'm like, guys, I didn't trust them before, nor the World Health Organization. I mean, these are the same people that have let the fluoridation campaign persist for so many years. They have botched so many of these events in the past. They violated so many of their own codes.
And they've been priming the pump with, virus scares almost every 2 years since 9/11.
Right.
If I'm not mistaken, it's been almost every other year since 2000.
At least every election cycle.
Every election cycle, midterms and full national. Yeah. So I see it as their updated basis for scientismic tyranny to roll out all of the Malthusian fantasies around climate change and carbon taxes and microchipped populations and consumption taxes and automobile gas divvying, and it's just the way that they're trying to come up with a rationality for rationing the entire world.
Just like that.
Is
There's already rationing at many of the most common grocery stores.
Yeah.
For why? Why was the supply, other than some panic buying here and there? I just don't understand why we are incapable of supplying some of these things. It's total fabricated scarcity, in my opinion, and it's to induce more panic. And the corporate heads would have you believe that this totally blindsided them and nobody could have predicted it. Yeah, fucking right. Y'all on the board level, y'all knew this shit was coming.
Absolutely.
Give me a break.
With all the continuity of government since the Bush days, swine flu, they've been just slobbering at the mouth for the kind of power grabs and population controls they can implement if people bought their BS.
Yeah.
And here it is. They're going live with it. They're going all in. And who knows? I mean, it looks like no one's going to call their bluff because it's such an intimidating bet. And they're going to keep going all in next year. And the year after that. And the year after that. And they're just expecting everyone to cow and adapt and bend before the medical altar.
Yeah.
And they're getting away with it as we see now. And one thing that's a little bit troubling to me is you see the whole Q sphere messaging around. Oh well, this is all a cover and a ruse for going after the deep state pedos and getting rid of the
but
evil
let's find out what
stuff.
what happens to Harvey Weinstein, right? Because he got tested positive and people's eyebrows are raised on that, right? Because I thought y'all had a shortage on tests, but Harvey Weinstein got one and he happened to test positive. And dude, as soon as I saw Tom Hanks tested positive, I knew this was bullshit.
Well, and then 2 days after Wuhan breaks out, the entire Iranian upper administration gets it, and all these celebrities get it, and it's like, wait a second, is this really just them signaling, oh no, I'm in trouble and Trump's gonna come after me? I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think this is a cult thespian, mass coordinated rollout, across the aisle bipartisan messaging, and it's just like the Aaron Rousseau said in Freedom to Fascism. They'll quibble at the gambling table year in and year out over which agenda is going to have the privileged state. But whenever the entire game is threatened, they all unite to defend it.
Right. And that's what we're seeing right now.
What is happening.
Yeah.
That's exactly what is happening.
Yeah, and
all uniting to defend it.
With respect to the stimulus, right? Okay, so I'm about to play a clip here with Steve Mnuchin, who is such an ugly man. You can just tell he has a dark heart. But anyways, about the money that they're so charitable. They're just gonna give. Okay, and now the Democrats are being accused of thwarting this stimulus plan. They don't care about the Americans. I mean, I know that we've missed.
They're like, no. Our pet projects need $1 trillion. No. Our pet projects need $1 trillion.
Yes, that's what's going to happen.
NGO needs $1 trillion.
So they're going to play.
Yeah.
They're going to play like the Dems are going to play like this. Whatever excuse they come up with. This is just to get Trump in office, which we have to prevent, or it's actually going to corporations and not to small businesses. They're going to make some bullshit argument. Then the money's going to get increased. and then they're going to pass it, and both parties are going to be happy because they got the money. And you just listen to this guy, Steve Mnuchin. Just listen to the way he talks, and he says thank you for bringing me on. Why is he thanking you? So he can give you the sales pitch. So he can give you the pitch. And they're doing
Goldman Sachs.
They're doing the same thing that they did in 2008.
Times 100.
Times 100. Times 100 isn't even enough. $1 trillion a day. Do you know how much a quadrillion is? The derivatives market is at 1.2 quadrillion, which is, if I can repeat this right, it's 114 times $10.4 trillion. So $1 trillion a day is 365 trillion a year. If you sustain it, that's not enough to bail out the derivatives market, which is possibly going to collapse.
Well, look at Deutsche Bank. I mean,
yes, exactly.
Oh my goodness! I mean, since what 2008, they're down like 90% or something. I mean,
the biggest derivative holder in the world, and I think they've laid off thousands of people. They are breathing their last gasps of air as the Federal Reserve. And by the way, who is the Federal Reserve?
Probably Deutsche Bank. Deutsche Bank probably owns like a majority share in the Federal Reserve.
Amazing.
It's unreal. I mean, it's a consortium of unaudited, secretive, unaccounted for, transnational elite financial oligarchs, and we're just supposed to believe, oh yeah, $1 trillion, yeah, America's got that. We're the greatest nation ever. Yeah, we're going to help out our people. Let these foreign transnational corporations print us into security.
Right.
Print money into a new safety and a new brighter future. Bullshit.
Well, this is where I think Ben Fulford, his information is pretty compelling, because he often will cite a future date as being a payment deadline for the U.S. America Corporation, the United States Corporation, which is what people falsely believe their government is the United States. They're actually talking about a corporation called the United States. And he says that they owe money to ancient Chinese and other Asiatic dynastic families who had loaned it to them when the Federal Reserve was created. And that, he says, that's what 9/11 was all about, was a payment deadline came up and they didn't want to pay up, so they just created this total false diversion. They heisted gold out of the World Trade Center vaults and all this. And he's been talking about financial deadlines, before this coronavirus and since. I think it's entirely plausible that, I mean, we are talking about a high stakes game. The average person cannot envision an individual who, these people are above governments. They do not think in terms of dollars. Like, it's incredible. They make a guy like Steve Mnuchin, who they sit in awe of, on Fox News, Treasury Secretary. Oh, he's in charge of important stuff. He's talking about working with the Federal Reserve. Like, it's all there in front of you. Like, you have to listen to this if you haven't heard it, Xavier. Like, check this out.
A key player in the negotiations for a coronavirus relief bill, the Treasury Secretary, Stephen Mnuchin. Mr. Secretary, welcome back to Fox News Sunday. Good to see you. You were up on Capitol Hill all day yesterday. You're expected to be up there again today. We hear that this package is now $1.8 trillion and may go above it. Is this going to get done? And if so, when will it get done?
Well, thank you for having me here, and I do think it will get done. We've been working around the clock in the Senate with the Republicans and the Democrats. I've been speaking to Mitch McConnell, Chuck Schumer, the Speaker, and I think we have a fundamental understanding, and we look forward to wrapping it up today. Let me just walk you through the highlights of the package, because the president is very determined to protect American workers. We've ordered a major part of the economy to shut down, and the president wants to protect them. So the first part are what I call small business retention loans. If you're a small business, you'll get 2 weeks of cash flow to pay your workers. You need to retain them. You'll also get some overhead. And if you do that, those loans will be forgiven. That's about half of our workforce. That will allow small businesses to keep people and make sure when we open the economy, they're up and running. The second part is direct deposits. The average direct deposit or check for a family of 4 will be approximately $3,000. This you can think of as a bridge for them to get through this quickly. The third component is enhanced unemployment insurance for people that are laid off due to the coronavirus. And the fourth component is a significant package working with the Federal Reserve. We'll have up to $4 trillion of liquidity that we can use to support the economy.
Okay. We're going to work with the Federal Reserve. We're going to have $4 trillion worth of... Do people... Does this just fly off the Fox newsroom shelf and people just glaze over that? $4 trillion worth of liquidity that we can use for broad-based, he's about to say broad-based lending programs.
And those are broad-based lending programs under Section 13.3.
Just cite a section, and it's like, what the fuck is going on here? I'm getting pissed.
Yeah. No, I mean, and it's for great reason, because this is funny money. This is literally the same thing as opening up a Monopoly board and then making photocopies of the $500 bills in the back room on a bathroom break and coming back and being like, wow, what a great bonus I have. Hey, you players on the board, each of you want like $500 to like maybe compete against me? Go ahead. Here's 500 for you. Here's 500 for you. Here's 500 for you. It's all fair now. It's all good. All right, let's roll the dice. Oh, look at that. I can buy the entire board over 500 times.
Yo, look, this is
let's keep rolling.
This is my bank. This is the bank I go to, Coastal Federal. It's a spinoff from an IBM financing unit.
Right.
Okay, effective Friday, March 20th, our branches will only be offering outside drive-up service to reduce the risk of COVID-19 exposure. This is the pre-event conditioning for bank holidays.
Absolutely.
Which happens all the time in the EU, across all those different countries. They have, that's just a thing, bank holidays, because they're in a constant state of market manipulation and depression. Why do they differentiate between recession and depression? Recession is like there's some sort of fixed level from which we have receded, whereas depression actually makes more sense because we're always being depressed by the Federal Reserve's control of the money supply and the government's basically first spending power of the Federal Reserve's printed money. So we're always being depressed. So we're always in a depression because we are not in a free society. We're not in a free economy. We are in a fluoridated society they are depressed by all of those things from our controllers. So why even call it a recession? It's a depression.
Right. It's another word for it is cataclysm.
Even when you can afford hot dogs and hamburgers for your barbecue during the summertime, you are in a depression like we've talked about before. If it's true, which it is, that fluoridation lowers the intelligence quotient of the population, how do you measure the value of the inventions or discoveries or creations that didn't happen because of those IQ points that have been lost?
Right.
So
I mean,
you can't even measure it in dollars. You cannot measure it in dollars.
No way. You couldn't print, 1,000 quadrillion dollars to make up for that.
Right. Right.
And they have this whole breadcrumb, Hansel and Gretel mythology about money printing, where if you just follow the breadcrumbs, we'll have a brand new hospitable environment where we'll just feast and feast and feast, and it'll be this nice little old lady looking after us. Those smart bankers, they deal with money all day, and we don't have to worry about that. They're just giving us all this food in their house.
Delivered by drones. Delivered by drones. Hey, by the way, that was number 6 on our 2020 list, Drone Opticon. And we talked about in Spain, they were using drones to, message people to stay in their house because of coronavirus, fear mongering and all that stuff. But in California, police are using Chinese-made patrol drones with night vision cameras during coronavirus lockdown.
Oh, cool. Yeah, no, that's only for our safety, of course. We just have to adapt to that. The drones are like fairies. Let's just befriend them.
Yeah, and in Raleigh, Wake County, they were beta testing with Google, I believe, and UPS. Drone deliveries for products, and that's the new justification for like you said last time, house arrest.
Yeah, well, I mean, why not just self-quarantine, and just mass stigmatize mild symptoms like sneezing and coughing, and us dirty plebs, we don't deserve to associate with each other anymore. We might as well just, we might as well just completely self-isolate and further atomize whatever last shreds of association we have. And, it's okay. We'll
think
get a
about
check
this.
in the mail.
Think about this. If you're at war, right? What do you want to prevent? You want to prevent people getting together to take you out. Okay.
Right.
And so then I hear a government who I already didn't trust say,
Right.
for your protection, do not congregate more than 10 people. And it's like, okay, if I'm a church and I'm told that, I'm a believing person, right? And I'm going to say to my congregation, okay, maybe I decide because I'm sick, or maybe I am legitimately afraid. Okay, that's up to you, but let's say you're at war and you're going to listen to the enemy say, for your protection, do not get together. This is as populations are rising against getting together,
100%.
social networking, not just in the United States. We've had
Worldwide.
Occupy Wall Street. We've had the Tea Party. We've had this. We've had that. People are trying to do it safely and civilly. It hasn't really resulted in much. Now, an invisible, virus threat, which actually might exist, and if it does, it was probably engineered by the very enemy who's saying don't get together to overthrow us. It's incredible.
Do people not put 2 and 2 together? I mean, one of the 10 most ominous words anyone will ever hear in their life. It's, I'm from the government and I'm here to help you.
Right. Said Ronald Reagan, I believe.
Yeah, and he got
quoting someone else, probably.
A token few things right. I mean, it's just like a broken clock. It's right twice a day. But he was controlled by the very same people who are all encircling Trump and Nixon before Reagan, and it's the same block, and they've been planning through continuity of government, Rand Corporation style war games, this whole, mass justification for basically converting the entire U.S. society into a planned economy. And look at the Cloward and Piven strategy,
Right.
and the Kudinov-Kalergi plan using mass migration and displaced populations as weapons. All of this stuff has been brewing and been incrementally introduced a soft boil. And I think at this point, they're like, the frog's still in the pot. It hasn't moved. It's 130 degrees. Let's go full boil.
It certainly seems that way. It certainly, it seems like, at a moment when we're all seeing Nancy Pelosi disintegrate and Joe Biden, a lecherous, old man who is losing his fucking mind on national TV, they are going to pull the card, we can't have more than 10 people, so we can't even have people at the debates to see Joe Biden. We're going to just hologram this one in after they showed deep fake. That's what, so where do we say identity virtualization was on here as well? Not only does internet censorship play into this because of how they're treating people questioning the coronavirus, but we talked about deep fakes in our 2020 list as well. And with everybody at home on VR, with virtual backgrounds and virtual this, I've literally heard the words, now that we're in this virtual world now.
Right.
We got to adapt to this and that. So we already got these politicians over TV, which is a questionable medium of substance, right?
Right.
Now it's just, it could literally just be like hologrammed in.
Just AI computer generated holograms. Seriously.
Wow.
It's getting to that point because it's so many thoughts are just whizzing through my mind right now. Just to go back to Mnuchin briefly, Pelosi, I think it was last year or the year before, she was on TV and she was asked about the impending government shutdown, and she was like, we've rectified everything, and then 3 months later, well, what about the upcoming payment, that we have to give to the Federal Reserve? And she's like, I just knew Mnuchin was gonna say that. We're gonna deal with that and cross that bridge when we come to it. And it's like she's treating Mnuchin, like a credit card collector or something. And the credit card has been maxed out 500 times over. It's just like, we just have to keep spending, and it's going to be okay, and just kick the can down the road. And this, I think this is all by design in the sense of putting the economy and the vast majority of the population under full crypto-communistic receivership.
Well, I listened to a very short segment of some recent Joe Rogan podcast. I forget who the guy was that he was talking to, but the clip was really about what Joe said, and it was in reference to this spending package and the proposed, I had posted this meme. It was like, not my president, and it's this real stanky face girl, and then the same girl, and it's like free $1,500, and she's looking like real like attractive, just to highlight the hypocrisy and how quickly someone will flip when a paltry $1,500 is at stake. They'll sell their soul. But also people are in desperate straight. So $1,200,
Right.
$1,500 is a lot of leverage, with that sort of situation.
Right. Well, and then another thing to keep in mind is this government shutdown specter, that always comes around seemingly every, 3 to 5 years. And this time, they may have to shut it down permanently and roll out the actual government that's been in place under FEMA and the WHO
You're right.
and the IMF, everything. And they're just going to take off the mask and get rid of the ceremonial BS that people have been paying way too much attention to for decades.
Well, Joe Rogan went on to say that, if they do actually pass these spending bills and people receive this $3,000 check, and they can pay for their Netflix subscription, and they can get the macaroni and cheese microwave, and they can pay for the electricity to run the microwave, they might, he didn't say all this, I'm adding that color, but he did, summarize, like, people will raise their eyebrow and say, wait, you guys could do this the whole time?
Well, perhaps. The main thing there is the memory hole.
Right.
People don't even have the frame of reference anymore to look back and be like, you know what? Maybe I shouldn't file for unemployment. Maybe I shouldn't accept this check. Maybe this is a form of moral, spiritual capitulation here, and that maybe there's got to be some way of collaborating cybernetically. And then that raises the next threat: is if people will buy the scientific hypothesis and the whole theoretical notion of a worldwide pathogen that it's addressing it justifies shutting down and arguably implementing the most draconian austerity that the world has ever seen. What's next? Are we gonna have a digital virus? If people are already quarantined inside their houses,
right,
and then there's a mass internet shutdown,
right,
they'll capitulate to anything, including drive-through.
Because the internet's my only way to connect with my other human being, and you see simultaneously the production of sex robots and other machines that tie right into people's screen world existence, and the gender wars and the cybernetic apocalypse, and how people are increasingly just disconnected from each other, but still acting out on their sort of reptilian, primal, like urges, amidst their total castration and asexualization with the all the hormone disruption and the negative sexual programming that's out there, and the anti-family agenda.
Absolutely. All of that is coming to a head, and it's just this is the black swan event that you literally mentioned, and not in exact detail of it being this particular virus schematic, but that there was something like this coming because the major indices were clearly technically overinflated. Fiat currencies are essentially worthless, capricious central banker creations out of nothing, and more people were waking up in mass, and the only solution they could come up with was this mass hat trick of, and you know what? This is actually way worse than the Great Depression on a lot of scales, because at least back then, people who were standing in the unemployment line or the bread line could talk to each other and coordinate some sort of resistance or communicate mass grievance then and there. And you don't see that anymore.
Right.
All of the digital online applications with unemployment, it doesn't even matter that they've been suppressing the unemployment rate for decades, and it's actually about 10 times higher than what they've, been saying. Now it's like, it's like a stock chart. Yeah, unemployment rates are up 40%, and my goodness, what a tumultuous time we're in. And they get to set the narrative and the panic tone without there being any assembly. So this is not only an assault on our just day-to-day human activities, it is a shredding of the very last vestige of freedom of speech, which is freedom of assembly.
Right.
And if
But
you can
for your
assembly,
own good. For your own
our
good.
own good,
We're
for your own
protecting
good.
you.
For your own good. It's just such a it's such a Mephistophelian bargain. You know, the idea that some external authority is going to exercise help on your behalf simply because it has this macro scale sense of benefit in mind for any given person. It's just, at this point in history, it has to be seen as just naive and oblivious.
Dude, look at this. So on the City of Durham Instagram, they gave themselves a virtual pat on the back. We've seen neighbors helping neighbors and wonderful people, businesses and organizations making every effort possible to support one another during this difficult time. Give a virtual only pat on the back because social distancing to someone or something that's made you feel #BullCityStrong. I mean,
God.
how sickening is this shit? And these useful idiots in the comments praising their government for this kind of propagandization and virtue signaling with the least bit of credibility. It makes me sick.
It's truly nauseating because, you know, with this little parenthetical manufactured consensus ideology of social distancing. I mean, what a Orwellian term to be highlighting here. Social distancing. In other words, society is a distant memory now, guys. There is no society anymore. We dictate what society is. And if we tell you that you need to distance yourself from it and every single other individual who makes it up, then that's the way it is.
Why is the time? Hold on, think about this. Why is the time difficult? They said, we've seen neighbors helping neighbors and wonderful people, business and organizations making every effort possible to support one another during this difficult time. Why is this time difficult? It's because they said not to open your business.
Right.
Do not congregate. Do not go to church. Do not have gatherings over 10 people. Do not travel. That's why it's difficult, because they said, you want an economy? No, you can't do that for your own good. We've seen people trading food, the food that they have that they can't get unless they ask your permission. I mean, we're not there yet, you know, where people are like literally, I mean, there are people starving in this country. I mean,
absolutely.
There are people starving. So
big time.
Yeah, that's what the school lunch program is, right? We don't have it anymore. Right? It was just taken away.
Yeah.
We might end the whole school year is what I'm hearing.
Wow.
Oh, and you gotta learn from home in quotations on TV. Why do people put that in quotations?
Oh, wow. Well, and then it's just this social engineering experiment. You know, what type of mass-induced panic can we come up with using our favorite trick of scientific garb to have people just completely follow and get in line? And they came up with a good one, because, you know, people still believe that, you know, they're on a terraqueous orb hurtling through a vacuum of space, whizzing around in 5 different directions, you know, aggregated millions of miles an hour. It's total malarkey. They still believe that they're, ancestors of primordial soup that turned into a rock, that turned into an ape, that turned into a human. I mean, it's unbelievable, and now they believe, and now they believe that there is an invisible alien presence, basically.
COVID-19. How many different terms have you heard for this fucking virus? COVID-19, novel coronavirus. I mean,
right. Yeah, it's just it's the whole thing that I mentioned in the last one, which is, all your bodies belong to us. Just capitulate. This is the new Borg term, where it's got alphanumeric with a dash. That means you have to comply. I mean, it's nominalism. It's weaponized nominalism on a scale that we have never seen before, and because people haven't seen it coming until now, they don't recognize the precedent for all the other nominalistic things that have been used to weaponize people to deny themselves any kind of sense of genuine human freedom, prosperity, or future. And social distancing is, it's like see something, say something. It's like the next version of that.
Oh God, yeah, 2.3.4.0.
That's right. That's right.
The very next iteration. Yeah, it's something else.
It's the mass alter of pure. I mean, it's a sacrificial altar, basically, because they're asking everyone to sacrifice every last vestige of what they would consider a decent existence, all to protect them from what I believe is a completely thanatoid, hyperbolic instrument of deception. At this point, sure, have there been plagues in the past? Probably. But you know what? We don't really know the ins and outs what is being purported here. And the evidence continues to not stack up. The numbers continue to not stack up. And what we see is this beast system being put into overdrive, hyperdrive, as people are just kind of like, deer in the headlights, not knowing what's happening all around them and not realizing that this has been in the works, in the clockwork, coming around tick by tick for generations.
People have to remember any documentation. I mean, we have to believe so many establishment figures to believe anything about history, really.
Right. You have to suspend all disbelief and just believe the experts as usual, ad infinitum, every single topic, every single issue.
This is why I really love the ztitic.news concept of proceed by inquiry, because I haven't experienced it firsthand, and so as far as things that have happened thousands of years ago, I mean, who am I? How can I believe somebody and what they say about that? I mean, it's just like,
why do I have to accept a cosmology that is literally inscrutable? There is no basis by which I can scrutinize the claims. I'm just supposed to believe because credentials are the substitute for reality. If there's a credential, if there are initials behind someone's name, that means everyone needs to shut up and not think any other thought than what the credentialed high priest has to say.
But the highest form of communication is telepathy, as far as I know, or nonverbal transmission. It's lossless, right? We have to first bring those down to the level of moving our jaw and all sorts of other parts of our body to make a sound, which can be perceived and interpreted, and then that's further degraded in resolution by the writing And so, like, as far as like plagues in the past, like, yeah, we read that somewhere.
Right.
I haven't heard it from any of my ancestors directly about like a
Right.
firsthand experience. So, so I'm not, I guess, not that people don't die from infections and disease. I'm not
There's a lot of
disputing
toxicity
that
in
at
this
all.
world.
I'm just saying the hyperbole and the hysteria by the people whom I do not trust. I didn't trust before this. It's not like this came out and I'm just like, trying to be contrarian on the matter. I didn't trust them before. I didn't trust them before.
They have a horrendous track record of lying through 10 sides of their mouth.
Right. Exactly. So, to Eddie Bravo's credit, why are you going to, give a criminal the benefit of the doubt when they're proven to be liars and obfuscators? I mean, that's just the bottom line.
It is the bottom line. And at the end of the day, the basis by which we're supposed to lend them legitimacy is the very instrument of our enslavement.
Right.
We're supposed to lend them legitimacy to perform something that it has a deleterious and harmful effect on our very lives.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why?
I saw, on that note, I saw a comment on one of these Durham posts about COVID-19. I think, let's see if it's, yeah, here we go. This rabble rouser, the Golden Rule, he said, this is Steve Schul, who's writing he has signed a state of emergency declaration amendment on Friday, March 20th, beginning at 5 p.m. All gyms, fitness centers, health clubs, and theaters must cease operations on their premises. So he's just going to he's going to write this little declaration from his, tower in Durham somewhere. And this rabble rouser, I don't know who this guy is, he's like, why don't you sign an executive order to stop the public water fluoridation program? It would protect the citizens by preventing the blockage of their thyroid, which occurs every day the fluoridation continues. This suppresses the immune system and makes the public more susceptible to hashtag COVID-19. But Mayor Schul doesn't care about that.
Ooh, nice.
And nobody said anything to that guy, even though that's so true.
It is that's a, there's, and again, if you tally up all the comments, maybe there's 60 comments on there or something. It's like one guy,
Right.
which is like what, almost 5%.
Yeah. Yeah, and if
that's all you really need to spur a mass awakening, and the power elite know that, and that's why I believe their paper tiger, although it is intimidating, I think that they are poking a bear that could absolutely awake from
I mean, look at this
and destroy them.
I don't know if you can read this on your screen, but look at this servile character of some of these comments. This guy says, are outdoor workouts permitted? Like, are you kidding me? You're gonna ask Steve Schul, who's sitting in some fucking musty government office writing on a piece of paper, Instagram? Are you a plant? Is this a plant? Do people like this actually exist? And then City of Durham has to say, if you wish to exercise outside, we recommend that you maintain physical social distancing of 6 feet from any others who are also exercising on trails, etc. Don't forget to wash your hands frequently too.
That's absurd.
And then this guy says, that's perfect, thank you. And it's like, is this your mommy? Like, what the fuck is that? And you know what's not even funny about this is I heard someone say, I went hiking, I heard on a conference call today, I decided to go hiking outside of the Bay Area, get some fresh air. And a lot of people, felt they had the same good idea and we all were having a good time. You know, kids were running around, and then on Sunday night, you know, the city declared that all the trails in the parks are closed because people are congregating for their benefit. And it's like, if you're gonna ask a question like this, are outdoor workouts permitted? Maybe you belong in a cage.
Right.
I'm being facetious, but
Or at least a straitjacket.
jeez.
I mean, my goodness. I mean, it's those kind of comments that make you realize, wow, you know, they've got a lot of leverage on their side.
Yeah. Yeah,
They've got a lot of leverage on their side, and you know, if I was in their position and I saw the proverbial frog not flinching at all, and it's 130-degree water, I probably would turn it up to 11 too.
Right.
I mean, it's like
the time is now.
If you tempt these psychopaths with inaction for so long, they're going to push the envelope, and that's exactly what they're doing.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more.
And I just, there's this. I know I'm going to come up with like 5 other things as soon as we close this out.
Yeah.
And I guess.
Well, here's another one. Here's
yeah.
another one for you. So, I saw, our hashtag Park Durham team is helping downtown Durham restaurants during COVID-19 NC by temporarily converting on-street metered parking spaces to free curbside pickup spaces. Learn more about all of their operational changes just announced yesterday. And I like this comment by this guy, Downy Bear. He says, amazing what can happen when the city waves a wand and makes something free. Y'all do remember this parking used to always be free, eh? And
absolutely.
They replied, check out the capitulatory nature of this reply. At Downy Bear, in response to Governor Cooper's executive order that closed all restaurants and bars in North Carolina except for takeout and delivery orders, we have converted on-street metered parking spaces in downtown Durham to curbside delivery zones. These spaces will return to on-street metered pay spaces once Governor Cooper's executive order is lifted. We strongly encourage customers to only park for the actual time needed to pick up restaurant orders so that others may use these spaces and help support these small businesses during this difficult time. There's that phrase again, this difficult time.
Yeah, as if it's just like some act of nature or just act of God. Like, oh, well, it's just all of a sudden a difficult time.
Yeah, and
all of a sudden.
And that's
all in austerity conditions.
Totally,
just like Greece and Italy.
Totally refused to even respond directly to what was stated by the initial poster here. I mean, They just basically say, you know, we're going along with this executive order. I mean, cities do have autonomy. They didn't have to do that because of Governor Cooper's executive order.
Well, and it's like, okay, all this coordinated effort to commence all these shutdowns, well, every single time, Governor Cooper, or whoever the puppet governor happens to be, with the stroke of a pen, can just turn off the economy again for an indefinite period of time until his magical pen sovereignly dictates to everyone that it's safe to exist as normal again. I mean, this is crazy social engineering.
Well, yeah, it really is, because it wasn't that long ago they introduced the parking meters to begin with, and there's this stupid government PR video on their YouTube channel where they talk about the implementation of it and all the, you know, things that they learned in their government schools about why metered parking was going to be a benefit to the citizens. Of course, nobody really wants it. The space is paid for by tax money to begin with, and it's often managed by private, non-city, you know, companies with sometimes offshore ownership. And so it's an extortion racket. And, you know, Downy Bear here is just pointing out that they just can wave their wand and make it free. And like you're saying about social engineering, they're just reconditioning and reconditioning. Hey, this is our blog, you know, like
Right.
this is our territory. We're going to take your money, whatever we decide we're going to take, you know, we're going to be able to take it. And it was funny because this rabble rouser is here again. He says, City of Durham uses mafia-style thuggery to enforce their parking meter extortion racket, which is
nice.
which is totally
It's accurate.
true. And this other guy, Proof Wine and Spirits, he gives Downy Bear this little eye roll, and it's like, oh, okay, I bet you love your chains, huh?
Oh yeah, they got all the bling. You know, my chains got bling.
Right.
You know, that's what this whole RFID new world economy is going to be like. Yeah, man, I got a chip, but who cares, man? I don't even feel it.
Right.
And so what if I got to get vaccinated every 2 months? I don't care.
I don't care.
I don't even think anymore. I let the VR box do that for me.
Yeah, and on that note, right, people's transition to other genders and species is going to be easier than ever.
Ooh, I mean, you watch all of a sudden, like, oh no, like, you know, it could absolutely be a domino effect where all of a sudden, you know, everyone is trying to transition to one form or another through, and I think through power of suggestion, through these technological feudalistic means of, well, how are you going to preoccupy your time now that you're out and out serf? How are you going to cover up for the fact that you don't really have a future unless it's dictated to you? Oh well, I might as well imagine that I'm going to become a chimera or a winged unicorn, or
We already have people living like this.
Yeah,
already.
It's unreal, and it's theater of the absurd. People have to realize that is one of the kissing cousins of this scientismic tyranny is the theater of the absurd, using absurdist measures of gaslighting, Stockholm syndrome, social engineering to just convince people, hey, you know, it's not all bad. Think about your ancestors. They had to like work in the dirt outside and like grow their own food. Like they didn't have, you know, GMO gruel delivered to them by a drone like we do today. That's great. Well, what an improvement. They just want people to just start saying like, oh, it's just such an improvement. You know, we're doing everything we can, and you know, the more and quicker we believe in what the authorities say, the quicker everything will just be okay again. I mean, it's that Dostoevsky social engineering bargain and that wager of like, oh well, you know, let's take away their bread under a false pretense, and then wait till they, you know, are willing to surrender whatever they want, whatever we want them to surrender, so they can get that little bit of bread back. And this clip is apropos. I mean, you know, I probably watched The Matrix 37 times. Because when I was a kid, I mean, I'm talking like 12. Like, I saw this movie when I was 12. And I'm like, you know what? This is like a documentary almost. It's like an allegorical portrait of the exact conditions we bring upon ourselves the more we just allow this creeping totalitarian.
Look at that AI drone.
AI super advanced, you know, 500 IQ drone. Oh, I can see into your soul. I know that you've been questioning reality, and now you are going to get thrown into the underground. We're going to take away your chip, and now you are dead to us. Get out of here. I mean, how many people are they going to do that to? And not all those people are going to be Neo.
Right. There's only one.
You know, There's only one Neo. I mean, and that's the whole sort of fantasy.
Flush down the
element of
toilet
Matrix.
like all the sanguinated,
right.
aborted babies.
That's right.
Right.
That's right. And it just goes on. And I think that I think people need to understand that this Hansel and Gretel sacrificial altar of scientismic tyranny, combined with this slow boil technocratic neo-feudalism, is right on our doorsteps, and people need to just not bow to it and think that, oh, everything's going to be okay and cool. No, this is going to be just like 9/11 times 100, where
Yeah.
you're not going to be able to travel without being groped by some,
Oh, so what hypocrisy is that now?
right.
Can I question? Oh, well, now you have no choice but to step into that machine. We're not doing pat downs anymore because of social distancing.
That's right. That's right. Which is why they're rolling out, this real ID crap. You basically have to have a passport to travel domestically now.
Right.
And, at any time, if you're out past a certain hour and, some Barney Fife deems it odd that you're traveling at, some hour on a road that you've already paid for in tax dollars, he can just come over and check your card. And if there's no vaccine information on you, well, if William Barr, DOJ, gets his way in having emergency detainment powers
Right.
over all American citizens, which that just is a nice, warm and cuddly headline. The guy who basically created a farce investigation for the Epstein case is now saying, oh, well, we need indefinite suspension of habeas corpus in the event that we use pre-crime statistics and calculus to determine if the person is too much of a threat to society, and we have to tailor curfews and more draconian measures to keep everyone else who's our obedient sheep safe. I mean, it's really gotten to a
Feverish pitch.
Feverish pitch. And if you were to graph it using their Chartist, boondoggle means, they just want this mass austerity program to just go on indefinitely into the stratosphere with no resistance. And at what point is there going to be a reversal in public opinion? That's their entire wager. There's not going to be one. We're going to dictate that opinion to everyone. Well, that's what you see now.
That's 2020, year zero. Yep. That's the year of the reset, and that I believe that. I mean, whether it's a positive reset or a negative reset, I'm very much a spectator. Hopefully, increasingly a participant in the formation. I mean, I do think we have some modicum of control over our future destiny through the power of thought. However,
yes.
That is not something I really engage in consciously on a daily basis. I think that probably happens more unconsciously during sleep state. That's just my opinion. But during the waking hours, it's just like things are hitting so fast, and we're just trying to decipher. And I try to stick to that. Our adage here, proceed by inquiry, and
definitely.
I think things are really aligning, not just for, in terms of these singularities like converging, but for, I think, Zitidic News's place in all this. Seems like we're, definitely, prescient in some ways, and a needed voice in these times to question the mainstream narratives, even by alternative figures.
Absolutely.
And we need that sort of diversity as these singularities do converge, and things like internet censorship just continue to bear down on us and truly depress us. So yeah, hopefully
that is true.
if you listen
That
to the first part of this discussion, talked about some of the updates that we're making, and hopefully we'll have some announcements soon about some programs for to attract new contributors to our site, and hopefully new viewers as well. And please subscribe to us on Google Podcasts, Android, RSS, YouTube. We're on BitTubers. I'd like to, at some point, Xavier, I'd love to do some of this live, with live viewers. That's going to take some additional technical work, but we can make it happen.
Right.
We can make it happen.
We can definitely make it happen, and I think if we can attract some of these contributors that we've mentioned before, and they put the word out and they corroborate a lot of our insights, I think that the discussions could really be top notch across the board. I mean, there's probably a few dozen content creators out there who we could really fire on all cylinders with, and
it's not a big crowd, and that's what's so exciting. Is I think Alex Jones has said for a long time he's tip of the spear. He is in many ways, but there are other circles of information and news networks, that are really pushing the boundaries. And one of the things we didn't really talk too much about in this particular session, but as far as like the whole VR and the digitization of reality and the confinement, the quarantine and so on, is the whole flat earth subject. If they're trying to stifle exploration and surveillance in a positive way of like where we are and what we're on and what's available to us, what better way than to scare everybody into their house? So
100%. I mean, I touched on it briefly, and as we did in the last episode, is we've already been under quarantine in so many other ways,
from
morally,
a
spiritually, economically
perspective.
Yeah, from just a macro historical point of view, this myopic stranglehold and bottlenecking over human consciousness has been taking place for a long time. And I think that, topographical planate phenomenology, it is plain as day. It is the etheric awakening. And that is what they're trying to suppress big time with this whole Masonic, nominalistic, weaponized phraseologies, flatten the curve. I mean, they're really coming out in full force and basically saying not only all your bodies are belong to us, but all your thoughts are belong to us. Don't you dare question our preposterous theater of the absurd BS cosmology that we try to shove down your throats every waking hour of your existence. Don't you dare question it. And that's exactly what we do here. We question just about everything.
With that, this has been a pleasure hosting the Zetitic Newscast remotely. We're going to have you in studio here sometime soon, Xavier, but it's been a joy here, Dave.
Oh, it's great. Awesome. Yeah. I'm looking forward to having our buddy Orthogonal back on, but also do a redo with Morgal. Maybe try and reach out to some of these some more creators here and plug a lot of our content, have them review it, see if we can set up some calls, set up some live chats, all of the above. Now is a really potent time in the ambiguity window.
For sure. It's almost like
also accelerate our need to jump out of the boiling pot and get people at least on that same page of, look, this is clearly a draconian, feudalistic overreach, and it needs to be reined in through mass awakening, corroboration,
And
on
activism.
multiple levels, and
And
activism.
People actually
And-
have to, do something.
That's right, and withdrawing consent in calculated communitarian measures, I think, is more important than ever, and it really, the sense of urgency for those type of activities is also at a fever pitch. So, and as you said in the last podcast, our resistance is so long overdue, and they're hijacking the resistance, and they're giving us a counterfeit BS compliance measure as a substitute. They're basically short-circuiting the mass strike that really should have happened 10 years ago.
Right.
To grind this thing to a halt, and they're grinding everything to a halt on their terms.
Right. Yeah.
And they're digitizing everything so that people aren't disgruntled in food lines and unemployment lines.
Imagine the Occupy Wall Street people agreeing to not get together. That's where they've got us now. So we've got a lot of hard decisions to make, and hopefully our honest, open discussion here at Zititic News is at least helping somebody digest this information in a way that's gonna, empower them and get the fear-based programming out of there,
and replace it with fire in the belly, indignation and motivation to reach out to their common man and find the points of commonality that can best resist this draconian overreach. Absolutely, it's a wild time, and they've made it bedlam. And the thing that we can do, in the very least, is to not take liars at their word. Do not believe the numbers. Do not believe the Thanatoid hyperbole. See this scientismic ultra for what it is. And just on a closing point, to add to some of our other critiques of scientism, all of the pictures you see of this so-called virus are spheres. It's more sphere cuckery.
Yeah.
It's more sphere cuckery.
Yeah,
it's just micro, supposedly invisible spheres, and when you look at the history of virology, it's yet another speculative, surrealist, hypothetical enterprise. Just like space, just like evolutionism, it's yet another sphere cuckery operation.
with a penchant for computer-generated imagery.
100% CGI out the wazoo. All CGI.
But you got to trust, the imagists and the chartists and the scientists.
Bow before those credentials, pleb. You have no intelligence or consciousness without our expertise.
All right, I'm going to play The Matrix on our way out.
Indeed.
Cheers, my man.